Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining me for this practice. This yoga is going to be the antidote to sitting. So if you spend a lot of time at your computer, sedentary during the day, this is going to help you bring a little more energy and some strength to the back of your body to help build a little bit of balance to all that sitting. So we're going to start standing. So go ahead and let your feet be kind of a natural stance. In other words, you don't have to force a perfectly rigid parallel. They're mostly pointing forward, but there's just a natural, feet are turned out a couple degrees. Line the toes up with each other front to back. And then just take a moment to stand with your gaze out in front of you. And exhale, you can even sigh it out your mouth. And just let go of your day. Bring your attention here right down to your feet. Feel the texture of your mat or your socks or whatever you're standing on. Now, soften your knees a little bit. So in other words, don't jam them straight, just a little micro bend. And then you're going to pretend like you're going to corkscrew your feet away from each other. So your feet are staying where they are. This is an isometric action. That means you act like you're going to move your feet, but don't. Act like you're going to spin your toes away from each other as if your heels could come closer together. So a soft bend in your knees, corkscrewing your feet, outer rotation, and see if you can start to turn on a little bit of energy in the back of your legs by doing this. Your toes might do some funky stuff. No big deal. Just see how that feels to engage there. Just check that you haven't slung your hips forward. They're still back, even though there's a little squeeze in your glutes. So keep that fire in your legs. Inhale and take your arms overhead. If your shoulders feel tight, don't go so high, or maybe just turn your palms forward. So we're going to see if we can squat any amount with that energy of pushing the toes away from one another. The knees might turn slightly out, but the buns are working, the back of the legs are working. And then we're going to stand and we're going to release the hands. So we're going to pass in and out of that chair pose a couple more times. Soften the knees, corkscrew the feet, squeeze your glutes, that's your butt. Inhale the arms up. Exhale, drive the hips back, long spine. Knees will go slightly apart, not straight parallel because the toes are out. Push the knees away from one another. Corkscrewing the feet, external rotation, stand. Drop the hands. We have one more. Inhale, reach. Send the hips back. Keep the chest lifted. Inner edges of the feet are down, feet are on the ground, but the knees are apart slightly. And now this time just fold forward. Reach for the floor, and again, you're going to keep the knees a little bit soft, which is to say, even though you're in a forward fold, don't straighten the knees all the way straight. Put some weight on the inner edges of the feet, but do that same action like you're trying to spin your right toes to the right and your left toes to the left. Take a couple of breaths. Your heart rate's probably up a little bit from doing those 3 chair poses, those little squats. When you're ready, you're going to put your hands down and you're going to step yourself back into dog pose. In dog pose, for most people, the heels are not fixed to the floor, and today that's actually going to be useful for us. So you're going to look at your knees. You're going to let your knees point mostly forward. So your kneecaps are pointing mostly forward, maybe slightly turning out, but mostly forward for most people. And your feet are going to go where they go. So that might mean your heels are slightly in compared to normal. Soften your knees. And see if you can do some similar engagement in the legs that you just did when you were standing. So knees are soft. You're hugging slightly to the midline by keeping some weight in the inner edges of the feet. But imagining that you could turn your feet out away from one another to fire the outer legs, the back of the legs, the glutes. So one more breath here in dog pose, working on that energy in the legs. And then inhale forward. You can either lower through plank and low plank, or you can just put your knees down and come to your belly. It's up to you. Now we're going to slide into Sphinx, so put your elbows under your shoulders. Tuck your chin so that you imagine you had like a tennis ball under your chin and you were holding that with the front of your neck a little bit, the front of your throat, so that the back of your neck is long. The feet are going to be in a natural position. In other words, they might be slightly turned out. Now you're going to push your pubic bone down to the floor and squeeze your butt muscles. Don't change anything in the torso. Just see if you can elevate the feet with straight knees. So they might only be like an inch off the floor or less, but see what you can do. Chin slightly in, neck long, hovering the feet. Maybe the knees are lighter on the floor, legs straight if you can. Keep squeezing the back body. Maybe you can get the knees a little higher. Now this might be a lot of work already. You might be really into back bends and you might want to lift up. And if that's the case, push down with your hands and start to lift your elbows. Keep the chin in so the back body's long until you're at that full spinal extension for your body. And then maybe just lift the gaze, keeping length as you kind of involve the neck in that back bend. So you should feel your entire back body firing, which of course is the opposite of sitting, which is where the back body's overstretched and doing absolutely nothing. All right, exhale, release all the way to the floor. Put your hands down under your chest or shoulders and push yourself up to all fours. Go ahead and step forward with your right foot and come up into a kneeling lunge. So this action of working the butt is going to be harder on the right leg because that leg's forward. See if you can squeeze your butt muscles, get a little scoop, and in particular that left butt cheek. See if you can get that to wake up a little bit. You can always poke it. I'm kind of like slapping mine, not because it's fun, but just, like, is it working? Because sometimes I'm not sure. So you can stay with that. Or if you want to kind of take it up to the next level and see if you're really engaging back there, could you lift your foot any amount off the ground? Left foot. And you'll notice right away that's going to increase the stretch in the front of your left thigh. So you're welcome to just play with that and see if you can keep it up. If it's not coming up and you're just squeezing, maybe you add a little bit of the left arm reaching to the sky to open the front of your body. Give it like 1 or 2 more breaths right there. And then put your hands down. Step back. Take dog pose. Same kind of slight variation to the standard alignment here as we did before. So the kneecaps pointing forward, not really worrying if that means the heels turn slightly in. And then a little memory of that corkscrewing action on the legs that we did in Utkatasana, chair pose, earlier. Just to try to wake up those parts of the body that sleep. So now you're going to just step your feet closer to one another, so narrower there at the back of your mat. And then you're going to elevate your right leg, and you're going to let your hips open to the right. Now squeeze your right butt cheek and push your right knee up toward the sky. So instead of just flapping your knee open, contract the outside of your right leg to elevate the knee. Roll the left shoulder to the sky and the right shoulder to the floor, kind of counter rotation. Give yourself a good breath in. And then you're going to lean to plank. Keep the leg elevated. Turn onto the outer edge of your left foot. With that elevated leg, you're going to stretch the leg straight, but keep firing the outer right hip and maybe get the right hand off the ground. That's totally optional if it's too much. So keep squeezing the right side of your buns to get that leg up. Now, this may be a lot already, but if you like playing with Wild Thing, you can step your foot behind you, lift your hips, turn your belly to the sky, push your right knee to the right, squeeze the right side of your buns, and open your chest. Tail up, knee to the right. Come back around. Plank. Go to the floor however you can. Come back to Sphinx. Tuck your chin. Catch your breath. Lengthen through the neck. Notice how your low back is feeling, if it's any different from how it was the first time you did this. My right side feels more awake because I was just squeezing that butt cheek area. Left side feels longer because we did that hip flexor stretch. Now revisiting what we did before. Pubic bone pushes down. That already should start to turn on the back of your body, your butt area. And now we're going to see if we can lift the legs like we're trying to lift the knees. The feet will come up, but the point is don't just bend your knees to get your feet off the floor. Chin tucked in, maybe staying here in Sphinx, maybe lifting the elbows into something more like a cobra pose, and perhaps elevating the gaze once you're there. Try to even out the work, right and left legs, right and left sides of your back, right and left arms. Come back down. Plant your hands. Down dog. You can always take a child's pose if you need a little break. But just be aware that if you're super used to that kind of rounded spine shape, i.e. sitting in a chair, you might always want to return to that rounded shape like child's pose, when in reality, to be balanced, it might be good to do the opposite. Okay, drop your knees if they're not down. Step your left leg forward. Come on up with your hands on your knee. Remember how it felt when you were doing that Sphinx position. You were pushing your pubic bone forward and squeezing your glutes. Try to do that here. See if the right glute area is working. You can touch it if you're not sure. And another option, of course, to get that back of the leg to work is to see if you can lift your foot. Now, for most people, one leg is much harder than the other, or doesn't even work to do this. So maybe you just play with turning the glutes on or reaching the arm overhead or doing what you can for your body today. This is going to just be really evident to show you any imbalances that you might have in your body. One more breath. Hands down. Step back, dog pose. Step your feet closer together. And now elevate your left leg. You're turning your hips out to the left. So that means your left hip is higher than your right. But you're thinking that the contraction of the left glute area is what's helping opening your knee to the left. Not just flopping your knee up in the air. So squeeze the outer left hip. Even though the hips are turning left, lift your right shoulder. Tuck your left shoulder down. A little counter rotation there in the chest. Then you might choose to stay here, or like we did on the other side, come with me to plank. Side plank, you're going to start by moving your right leg to its outer edge. The left leg, bring it forward initially. Maybe straighten it. See if you can get your outer left thigh to work to lift it. Maybe the left hand leaves the floor. So it's really like a star pose, star version. Left cheek working. Option to stay as is, or to drop that foot behind you. And just like when you were lifting it in dog pose, you squeeze your outer left hip, push your knee left, and send your buns toward the sky. So you're coming into kind of a back bend shape here in Wild Thing, and you're doing it by squeezing your butt and lifting your hips toward the ceiling, pushing your left knee wide left so that left glute's really working. Strong pressure in right hand as well. Come on back around. Come into dog pose. Plank pose. Chaturanga if you want it, or just drop to your knees and then come down, and then pick a back bend. Perhaps one of the ones we've done earlier, or some newer, different one that you like that employs these techniques that we've been working on. Take your dog pose one more time. We're going to go right back into right leg lifted. So feet closer together can help with balance. And this time we're going to keep that action of rotating the hips, squeezing the outer right glute, but we're going to straighten the right leg. So send that right leg higher, one big breath in. And now we're going to step the foot way up by the right thumb. You might have to get that hand out of the way. Drop your left heel. Pause there, kind of setting up for side angle pose, among other things. Push your right knee into your right arm. If your right arm's on the inside, push your right knee to the right. So that corkscrewing action, right foot, it's turning to the right, pushing the right knee out, turning the right hip on. Don't change that. Windmill the arms up. So you're in warrior 2, right knee is pushing to the right, so that right hip is really turned on to open the pelvis. We're going to reverse our warrior. Left hand lightly on left leg. Strong energy reaching through right hand. Now, arms horizontal. We're going to begin to straighten the right leg as much as we can without losing this feeling of external rotation and fire in the right hip. So it might not be quite straight. Once you have that, lean to the right, lightly touch your right leg or the floor, but don't put too much weight in it. So you're working your body in ways that are different than if you just collapsed onto your leg. External rotation in the right foot. If your foot's not moving, but you're actively working your thigh in the socket as if to turn your outer hip down and your inner thigh up. Okay, bend your knee, touch the earth, step back, dog pose. You can always take that vinyasa, chaturanga, through your back bend there in the middle. Then find your way back to dog pose. If you do, step your feet a little closer together. Use your left outer hip to raise your left leg up. Turn the hips open, squeeze the left butt, straighten your left leg. Really stretch through that leg, but with the action of lifting from the outer hip. You're going to lean forward, step that left foot up by your left thumb. I like to get lighter in that left hand to make some space. Now the right heel is going to the floor as if to do side angle pose. With the left arm to the outside, you can push your left knee back into your arm. If your arm's not there, just imagine you had something to push into. So now left foot is thinking, push back, turn out, fire that outer hip. So you're going to keep that energy. It's really strong and engaged in your legs. So try to not lose that, but cartwheel the torso up. So it's warrior 2 for a moment. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. Hi. Let's reverse this pose. Right hand's going to come down, left hand to sky. So I'm less interested in how far down in the pose you are. Like old school yoga is like, get your thigh parallel to the floor. And I'm like, hey, let's balance our leg energy out. Like, let's work where we normally don't work, i.e. the back of the legs. We're going to come upright with the torso, so just warrior 2. Now we're going to begin to straighten this left leg, but we're employing that external rotation the whole time. So if you watch it, your knee will track over the toes. It won't turn forward at all. You're going to see how far towards straight can you get without losing that. Should feel like your leg's really working. You can probably hear in my voice, like I'm breathing pretty hard. And that fire, it's like I said at the beginning, this is like the antidote to sitting. So don't lose that. Lean to the side. You're just lightly placing your left hand down. So sometimes we really put weight in that hand, and today I'm saying use your body strength a little bit more. Doesn't mean you can't put your hand down. Just fire up some of that power. One of the things I notice when I engage my hips like this, they don't pop when I lean over into these poses. Or if I'm kind of floppy in my hips, they're like crack and pop when I lean to the side. So I think that's a good thing. All right, last moment here in this kind of active triangle pose. And then we're going to come on out and touch the floor. And again, stepping back either to vinyasa on the second side. Vinyasa is just like shorthand for flowing through to plank, low plank, and a back bend. It really just means move with your breath. But that's where we are in yoga today. And come back to dog if you're not in it. And give it 2 more breaths. Okay, put your knees down. So we're going to just sit for a moment. You can sit on your heels or sit cross-legged or with your legs out in front. And just rest your hands on your knees or in your lap. Soften your gaze or maybe close your eyes. Feel the vibrancy of energy moving through you. We're really kind of pulling the energy up with this practice. It gets really low during our sedentary days. It's high in the mind, low in the body. So just give it a couple more moments in quiet here. If your eyes are closed, you can begin to blink them open. And if you're not sitting on your behind, park your butt down, put your legs out in front. So we're going to thread the left foot underneath the right knee, and just kind of tuck it over to the side there. And then we're going to pull the right foot closer. If this isn't comfortable for your knees, you can straighten that left leg and then cross your right ankle over your left knee instead. So you decide. We're going to pick up the right hip and we're going to slide it back in space and then put it down. So the hips are going to be turned a little to the right, like a little asymmetrically. You might have to adjust your legs and then sit up somewhat straight, not rigidly so, but just elevated. Pull your knee in toward your chest with your hands. Feel that little bit of squeeze on your belly there. Kind of knee making contact perhaps with your stomach. And then slowly begin to turn to the right to twist. Just not rushing, kind of letting your body unwind a bit. If you get deeper in the pose, you might switch your hands so that your right hand is behind you on the floor. Or maybe you're crossing your elbow over. We're just starting to stretch out this area that we worked a little and to just calm our energy down for the end of the practice. Let's turn your head to the right. Lift your chin. And especially think the right side of your neck. That tends to shorten when you look to the right. So lengthen kind of up toward your right ear. Smile. Or maybe just the hint of an idea of a smile. Maybe it's just a sparkle in your eye and nothing else. Just grateful for this moment to move the body. Come on out and switch your legs to whatever the configuration was you chose on the first side. And just remember to lift your left hip and push it back. And so what we're doing when we do that is we're beginning the rotation in the pelvis instead of fixing the pelvis and asking the spine to turn, which really puts undue strain on your sacroiliac joint. So left hip is slightly behind the right. You're going to hold your knee with your hands. You're going to draw your knee up, and that's going to put more weight on the inner edge of your left foot. You'll probably feel a little bit of contact between your belly and your leg. So just pause there and let your back release. Just listening to your body when it's ready to turn into the twist instead of when your mind thinks it's time. It's a different answer if you ask your body and you ask your mind, you know. Just let the pose go at its own speed to its own destination. If you feel resistance, just be mindful of that and respond accordingly, backing away or being a little more gentle or being patient. All the things that we wish someone would treat us with: patience, gentleness, compassion. We just practice giving that to ourselves now. These last few moments, if you haven't turned your head to the left, do so and try to get some length in the left side of your neck, almost like the left ear is going up away from the shoulder. Come out of your twist, square up the hips again to face forward, and then send both legs out in front of you. Lean forward. Place your hands either on the floor, on your shins, on your feet, or wherever feels like the right place for you today. So now just working the legs in the front, the quads. We didn't work those as much today, but just working those enough to press the thighs down toward the floor. Not working so much that they lift up. They block any calmness or sense of ease within the working that we're doing. Think of lengthening your spine, allowing the breath to fill all the crevices, the nooks, the crannies. Roll on up and make a choice as to whether you'd like to lie down on your back, put your legs up the wall, or take some other form of relaxation here for just a couple minutes to conclude practice. And I know it's easy to want to skip this part, but just remember that you're integrating whatever changes that you made in your body mind during this time with your moment of relaxation. If you just hop up, you don't quite cement it in place as well. Spend the next few exhalations consciously relaxing your body. And if you notice somewhere that isn't relaxing, you can clench that area, kind of flex those muscles, holding that clench for a couple, 3 seconds, and then releasing and allowing yourself to really feel the contrast of the relaxation that comes after flexion. the end of your next exhale, push out just a little bit more air and pause for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, completely empty, just resetting. Then softly breathe in. Slow, steady exhale. No holding, just going right into the next inhale when it comes. You can stay longer, of course, if you want to, but if you're ready to reawaken, just move your fingers and your toes, your ankles and wrists, and start to transition. If you're lying down, you'll want to roll to your side just so it's less of a jarring transition to sitting straight up. Maybe blink your eyes open and kind of see from this new perspective now. Push into the floor. Come on up. Take a seat. As always, it's been a pleasure to be with you.